Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. It's been a long time. My life changed. I think many of us have experienced a lot of change and will probably. So I hope it's for the good. Anyway, what we're going to be talking about right now, what are we going to be sharing to you is how I use the Dramatica software, the Dramatica Theory to help me create my stories. And unfortunately, I haven't really been able to share my stories since I had to learn, you know, how to persist in doing something. And you know how it is when creating artistic, when undergoing artistic, taking artistic endeavors, how that can be really require us to be focused. But I realized that sometimes you just have to take it easy, and that's the way to actually bring out our creative forces, our creative energy out so much better. Okay, so I'm going to be using my the story structure of Survivors, the latest one from 2016. I think I generated this from 2016 or 18. I'm not so sure. If you're not familiar with the Dramatica software, please go to dramatica.com, or there's a free book there, the Dramatica Theory book. You can download the PDF. Here I printed the Dramatica dictionary, which is very useful. So basically, Dramatica is like, I don't know if you guys do tarot or oracle cards, stuff like that. You know, you have a card that shows you themes, and then you combine those themes, and you create a kind of story. Our brains automatically create kind of story reflecting from what we have inside of us, right? So it's like bringing out what's our in our subconscious, something like that. So you can understand that more if you study the Dramatica Theory book, which I studied like 2004, I guess, and it took me 6 years because I wasn't really focused at that time. My brain was really foggy. I was in great anxiety and stuff like that. So stories. Let's go. We're going to be focusing on, this is really very helpful. We're going to focusing on developing a story of the main character, which is the perspective character of the story. Now remember, the main character story or through line is actually a mirror of the overall story through line in a way. Okay, so this is the journey, our journey, the perspective character's journey within the story. And of course, this is the struggle within himself as he deals with the world outside, or as the world outside affects him. This is the internal story in standard story theory. Okay, this is in Seinfeld. This is the I think in other I forgot all the other story theory names, titles. But we know that there's this internal story, right? This internal story, the personal story. For example, in Star Wars, it was Luke's story, which is the internal story, right? And the overall story is about the Empire versus the rebellion, and all that. You can study more by reading the Dramatica Theory book or searching for Melanie Ann Phillips. She's very intelligent, and it might be hard to understand what she's saying until you get familiar with the way she expresses herself and the things that she is trying to express. So I think using the book to do that would help. So okay. So let's use the story of Survivors and we're going to be focusing on, well, let's look at the everything. Okay, so this is going to be a long video probably, and but I hope this is going to be helpful to you. So what drove me here is to actually document how I use the plot sequence report. Within the software, you can actually generate a plot sequence report, or the PSR, which shows you things like this. What the current concern is, and then how that is explored. Okay, that's you can check it out. I don't have my PC right now because I lost it. It was it was about 12 years old PC, and now I don't have any PC use. So if you want to donate, maybe you want to donate some money there. Okay, I can buy a new PC. So okay, so let's look at the first what I do. Okay, so for example, I want to focus on, of course, when you generate this story structure, you don't actually generate it randomly, but you can. Okay, I do that sometimes. Okay, just to gather ideas. You can randomize it, produce stories, but mostly you're gonna choose from a menu. So you're gonna have to have an idea of what your story will be. Then you answer certain questions there in the engine settings, and then it's going to generate all the other aspects, all the other story points that you're going to need in your story. So here, this is what I have, a story form for survivors. The objective story is in the universe, or in the situation, and it's focusing on the past. Okay, and with an issue, prediction versus prediction. Now I don't have the time to explain this, but we can use the Dramatica dictionary again to refer to this, and use this as a sort of card, to show us, to tell us what this is about. Okay, so you're going to need to study Dramatica theory for this. So assuming that you already know, we're going to go ahead and use the plot sequence report to help us create a synopsis of our story through lines. Okay, and then we're going to combine that, but we're not going to do that now. I'm just going to show you how to use the plot sequence report to help us do that, to help us start that. Okay, so the important thing for me is to get these elements first. Okay, now focusing on the main character, I need to know what this is. Okay, I don't have to know everything, but I need to know the problem, solution, what he's feeling, right? But I don't have to know it exactly right now. Okay, I just have to have an idea of what this is. Okay, especially this progression. Okay, so from understanding or misunderstanding something at the start of the movie, he ends up learning something or unlearning something at the end of the story. So that's what I'm thinking, right? I just put that at the back of my mind. Just throw it out there, just put it, just know it. Just have an idea that that's the progression. So how does it progress? You understand something and it starts doing something, right? Or not doing something. And then it starts obtaining or losing something. So it's trying to keep something here, or protect something. Then he loses that, then he deals with that, then he learns. Okay, so first he misunderstands, for example, which is exactly what this story here. He misunderstands in a way. He gathers an understanding. Then he starts doing something. Okay, and then he loses something. That's the story of Zergan. And then he learns at the end of the act, the end of the story. He starts to get this. He learns something. So again, it's not very clear. Okay, you just have the idea. So I then go to the plot sequence report. for the main character through line. Now, we already know that he starts from understanding something to learning something, right? Or misunderstanding something to unlearning something, or understanding something to unlearning. You know the variations there. So then I ask, what about this understanding? What is this about, really? You know, when you go into a movie, you start either the first sequence of the movie after the enticing incident. For example, it's an attack on a citadel, for example. That's the inciting incident. It's an action-packed or dramatic or very emotional or very mysterious event that catches the player or your readers or your moviegoers. So you catch their attention, and then you start with the main character, right? You introduce him. In a way, you introduce him, but tell his story. Okay, introduce him by telling his story. Okay, so here, the plot sequence report says that his understanding, the act of trying to understand or misunderstand. So actually, he ends up in this first sequence. He ends up either misunderstanding something or understanding something. Okay, but what is that all about, really? So the plot sequence report tells me that it's about state of being, situation, circumstance, and sense of self. Okay, so I go to find it in the chart where that is. Okay, so I look for it. Where is that? So we have here. So it's actually in the psychology I forgot, quadrant. Okay, it's in the psychology quadrant, and this is how it is. This is the structure of it: state of being, situation, circumstance, sense of self. Okay, sometimes the PSR generates something like this. Example: circumstance, state of being, situation, sense of self. Okay, or circumstance, situation, state of being, sense of self. Okay, so how I use that is like this. So our the structure given to us here is state of being, situation, circumstance, and sense of self, right? So how I use it is whenever something crosses like this, either up or down, I take that as a conflict. Okay, it's something that smashes into each other because these points are actually opposite points when you study the theory. So these points are the extreme of these ideas here or themes, and this one is companion, I think, or was it this? This is the dependent and the companion. Okay, so I think about it like this. So since we are state of being, situation, circumstances of self, this is how I think of it. State of being amplifies situation, meaning his concern of state of being, understanding, he first starts out in a state of being as he tries to understand something, right? So that's how it works for me. So let's look for the definition of state of being here, so I can clarify this. Give me a second. I have a paper here, a printout. Give me a second, please. You know, I hate it that people lose interest too fast in our time right now, because I'm used to living in a slow time way back. I'm an old guy. So sense of self, see here, it's a variation. Oh no, state of being. Sorry, observe that. Let's look for state of being. Alright, that's fine. State of being. Okay, state of being. Whoa, not here. It's not here. Did I lose it? Did I lose the page? Or did I miss it? QRS, sense of self. So, state of being here. State of being. Okay. See, the state of being is a dynamic. It's an opposite of sense of self. So, state of being is one's true self. Okay. So that's what it means. So he's trying to understand something, but for now, he starts out with one's true self. So this is what I think. I think he is, at this stage in the story, he doesn't understand who he really is. So that's what it is. In my story, survivors, Zergun has no idea or is confused in some way of who he really is. So he's trying, in a way, I show him in the comic and in the movie, he's lost. Okay, he doesn't have an idea of who he really is. That's the emphasis there. That's what I'm trying to show. Or he has lost his sense of self, state of being of who he really is, or who he really is lost or broken, something like that. Okay, so you can create a lot of variations depending on your story. Okay, so for me, since his problem is perception, the way he sees. Perception means, let's look for perception. That's the problem. That's what the driving force of the main character here. So that's what's driving him. It's the perception. It's a wrong perception, maybe. Or he doesn't have a clear perception. Perception. Okay, perception. Here. The way things seem to be. Perception is a point of view on reality. In truth, we cannot truly get beyond perception in our understanding of our world. A character that represents perception is more concerned with the way things seem than what it is. Therefore, he can be caught off guard by anything that is not what it seems. Appearance, how things seems to be, discernment. So, in a way, the problem the main character is that his external view. He's too focused on his external view of what the world looks like, or what the world shows him, for example, or what the world seems to him. That's what's driving him. Okay, so let's just archive that. Okay, that's what I do. I just archive that. I don't know how that really is, what that really is, how that really looks like. So I just archive it. So it's just going to automatically come out from you once you start building the story. It's just going to come out. And a lot of types of that will be coming out. Later, as the character struggles with it. So, for example, in Thanos, if Thanos was the main character in Endgame, right? Was it Endgame? Or I forgot the title. So Thanos, his problem, what's driving him is this perception, this idea that there's an imbalance in the universe and that the universe is going to destroy itself by, scarcity. If he doesn't cut off living things 50%, which is stupid, because if you cut off, for example, you cut off humans 50%, you also cut off dairy and chickens and all that 50%. It's just the same. And you just have a lot of space with the same amount, the same demand, supply and demand. Anyway, perception is his problem, right? Here in our story. Then his focus is on self-aware, which is actually because of his perception, the external world, how he sees the external world, how the external world sees him, what he focuses on is the self-aware. Self-aware. Self-aware is being conscious of one's own existence. Okay? When a character possesses self-awareness, he fully appreciates all his feelings, thoughts, abilities. So, self-perceiving, self-conscious. So there's an error in how he sees himself. That's how I translate that now. Because of this perception problem that's driving him, he now sees a problem. There's now a problem or an error. Let's just use error because there's some problem here. So because of this perception that's driving him, there is now an error in his how he sees himself. Okay, for example, this perception is a let's say a propaganda by the conclave. Okay, so how they were brought up as zealots and Templars and all of that. Because of that, he now has a problem with self-aware. Okay, exactly what we see in the plot sequence report here. State of being. Okay, he doesn't understand who he really is. So we already have a connection here now with this. The main character's focus, right? So we start the story immediately with this, in this story form. But most of the story forms I've explored actually have this idea. Okay, so you start the story with the main character now, knowing that it's about himself. We don't know exactly what that is right now. We just have the idea. Okay, so we write that down. What I do is I write that down and say MC through line. Yeah, put that right down. So I began. He starts out not confused about who he really is. Okay, so that's one line. So just do one sentence per idea, because these sentences now we can transform this into scenes or dialogue or interactions. Okay, just do one line, keep it short. Okay, then if you want to expound on that, then just add another line. This is one scene. For example, he starts out confused who he really is. We can show it in a cutscene, maybe maybe a flashback. You know, for example, so he's just standing there while his brothers are murdering each other, for example, in a battle. He's just standing there confused. We can show it like that. Okay, it's just a scene. It's just a sequence, maybe 60-second sequence. Start out with a battle. You know, he's running with his brothers, and then fighting, and then suddenly he kills his best friend, maybe, or his friend, or maybe just another zealot, and then he gets confused. He just stares at the dead Protoss or dead Dark Templar, and he looks around like that, and his eyes are full of confusion, something like that. Okay, we can show that, or we can actually have a dialogue or a memoir. Let me take some coffee here. Okay, so using one line is so much better. Trust me, I used to write papers, pages. But you can also use that. But it's going to get you confused. So it's better to just write the one line. Okay? And let your imagination flow in the background. Okay? Don't write down everything that your mind is deliberating. So that's actually going to free your creativity still without anchoring you to a certain idea. Okay, that's so much better. So he starts out confused about who he really is. Okay? Then, for example, his external world. If you can hear my breathing, I'm so sorry, because I'm just using the phone and the phone is right in front of me. So if you can hear my breathing, I really breathe. I'm so sorry. Please just excuse it. Okay, I have no power over that. His external world is making him is we don't know what this is. Is showing him I just used that, showing him now he's confused about himself. Okay? All right. So in the it doesn't have to make sense, okay? It's just a note. So because we are actually, when we are writing, we are writers. When we are creating ideas about our writing, we are actually imagining events and action and movement and mental processes, change in emotion, changes. We're actually creating in our minds not static things, but moving things, changing things, okay? Interaction, things that are interacting, okay? So when I write like this, his external world is showing him. So I have the idea now that's showing him. Something's being shown to him, but I have no idea what it is really. It's showing him. Now he's confused about himself. Okay? I can remove this showing by telling. Okay? Now he's confused about himself. Okay? Or the external world is molded him. Now he's confused about himself. Okay, so being a Templar, actually, being a zealot, so this is his backstory. He was a Templar zealot. He's a primer, actually, a high-ranking zealot, who then was about to be promoted as a Templar, as a High Templar. So you have to undergo another phase in the Templar training because his abilities in the Kala, his psionic abilities are improving or developing. So he's supposed to be admitted into the academy, or whatever that is, to the temple archives or the arbiter tribunal or whatever, into this training to become a Templar. And that's just another, path of the Templar caste, to keep them in line. Okay, in my idea, that's how the conclave actually controls Templar, so that they don't become like the other character. I forgot his name. This was a long time ago. Orimron. So this guy Orimron actually was not trained, was not enrolled into this because he was a rebellious Templar. So from being a warrior, he became a Templar in himself. His psionic abilities actually exploded because of the lack of, because he was not controlled by the conclave. The conclave didn't exist at that time. It was very new that time. So this is just the backstory of the characters, okay? So Ormron becomes so powerful, and he found another path for himself, which now threatens the conclave, which we will be coming back to in this story, okay? So they are actually, let's just focus on, so that's a story. So it's just an example, okay? So for Zergan's backstory, he was actually supposed to be admitted to become a Templar, but he refused. So what happened is he was thrown into perdition, or thrown into this location where there's no psionic connection there. He cannot connect with. So in a way, his psionic connection with the Templar caste is cut off by being in that area. So that area has another story to it, but that location is actually a dead zone for psychic link. So there's no psychic link there. So that's where we start the story actually, the game. Anyway, we now have the idea that this is how we start using the plot sequence report. That it starts with loss of sense of being, state of being. So we know now that he's confused of who he really is. So that's what it is, right? Now I use this state of being, situation. That's the plot sequence report, right? State of being, situation. So I'm going to use that as a amplification. So this is actually a pair. Not a dynamic pair, but I think this is dependent, and then I just use amplification. So what does that mean? So state of being amplifies situation. So what is situation? Situation is a mental process, right? It's developing a plan. Look for a situation here. Situation, it's a fixed attitude. The situation, no, it's not what. Let's look for the dynamic. Situation, circumstance. The arrangement of one's environment. Situation describes the ins and outs and practical considerations of the environment in which the character finds himself. Throughout the story, the situation may involve or may remain constant depending on how the essence of the message is, etc., etc. So how things stand rationally, or a reasoned evaluation of the environment and its context, so environmental state, okay? So his state of being, this having confused, he's having been confused, being confused of who he really is, now amplifies his external view of his environment. How he sees in his environment now is also confused. So that amplifies his confusion now, amplifies an error in how he sees the situation. Okay? How he sees the world. So that now relates to the perception problem. Okay? So we can already see that there's a perception problem here of the main character through line. Okay? So now the situation conflicts with circumstance. Circumstance means your emotional reaction to the environment. Okay? Or now his emotional reaction to the environment, which then amplifies his sense of self. Okay? So how he thinks of himself. So now he misunderstands who he is, how he thinks of himself. So in a way, the path of the PSR here, I'm shortening this because it's getting too long. Starting from someone who have no idea or being confused to who he really is, or have been confused to who he really is. Example, this guy has been, he's been under this, under the hand of the conclave, right? So he doesn't have an idea of who he is. He actually haven't explored who he really is. But he has a hint in himself, right? So when he was supposed to be quote unquote promoted, he refused. And now he's now placed in perdition. In a way, that confusion now is going to, we look at this, how his story will run here, is going to end up of him having an idea of himself, which is wrong, a misunderstanding of himself, a sense of self. Okay, so he's confused, and then he ends up at the first sequence of the story having a wrong sense of self, or a misunderstanding of the sense of self, which is also connected to this, to his problem of perception and focus in self-aware. His external focus of himself is now here. Okay? Are you getting it? So this sense of self, misunderstanding of his self, is now shown here. So self-aware. It's also related here, right? So he starts out confused, which amplifies his external appreciation of events. So maybe he doesn't really care about what's happening, or he has a negative view of what's happening, like I don't really care what's in it for me, stuff like that. I don't care about that. And then that conflicts with his circumstance, emotional reaction to the situation, because the story here is actually in the game, in my story. So he starts out with this, confused about himself, right? Then he's in the perdition, and then now Thelos comes to him. So that's us, the player. We come to him, we rescue him while the Zerg was attacking everything, and we tell him about the situation, the external view, and then he expresses his view of the situation. Doesn't really care. I don't know what to do, stuff like that. Who am I? What is this to me? What is this really to me? But then, as we bring him along, he begins to realize it becomes a conflict now with his emotional reaction to the situation. So as he sees things, the destruction, the death of his brothers, his people, this view, his external view, now comes into conflict with his emotional view. Okay? Which then amplifies this sense of self that he has. That he has to be a zealot, he has to serve the people as a zealot, So he comes back. This is a problem in my mind, okay? This is an error. A character goes into the wrong path. So he reverts back to his, he lost that idea, right? Being a Templar like that, he lost the idea of this killing, being a Templar, being a slave to the conclave, right? He doesn't know that. So So he's just confused. Now he's called to action. He responds hesitantly or reluctantly. So he's the reluctant hero, and he has no stake in it. He's just, "Oh, fine, let's do it, but why?" But then when he comes out of perdition, he sees everything being destroyed. His emotional reaction then becomes the driving force, which is in conflict with this idea that, we don't have to be, controlled and stuff like that. We have to find ourselves. I forget exactly, but you can formulate ideas there. So his external view, whatever that is, becomes conflict with his emotional view, which then amplifies his sense of self. So now he has this. He reverts back to this idea that he is the savior, just like how the Templar, manipulates them. They don't tell them that they're slaves, but they they shouldn't have individuality, but are part of the whole, part of the legion, and the legion is the savior of their people, of the universe, of other races. So he reverts back to that sense of self. So he gets this idea of himself. He is the savior. That he has to get back to being a Templar. But then we're going to prove that wrong in this story, of course. Okay? So that's how I use the PSR for establishing, just rough ideas. Okay? Just the flow of events. So in here, we see a main character that starts confused and ends up having a wrong sense of self, or a misunderstanding of his sense of self. Sense of self is your view of yourself. Okay, we can look at that in your dictionary, but we're going to look. You just refer to it yourself. Sometimes it's better to study the dictionary and then just go for the short descriptions, short meanings from the. You can actually find it in the report section. You can print out the definitions there. There's an option to print out the definitions of words. So now we know how this starts and ends. The first sequence. So that's how the first sequence of the main character is. So there's actually movement there, right? There's change. So from a confused guy, we get this guy who is still confused but he has an idea about himself. He has this awareness of himself, but which is wrong. Okay, so this is the movie. I don't know if there's any movie like that. So for example, there's let's say in a neighborhood, right? It's the worst neighborhood you've ever been to. And then this guy's been abused since he was young. So he just grows up into this gangster guy, right? He cares for nothing. He's just doing his job. And then, at a certain point in the movie, from this sequence, right, we see him growing up, becoming drug lord, and then at this fatal moment, he was given an order, a job. Then he gets into the room of this house, right, a certain apartment. Then he shoots the guy. He shoots the wife. But then there's a kid there, a baby, which is the reason why that guy didn't pay up or whatever, or left the group or whatever. So now he has to kill the kid too. So that situation now is in conflict with his emotional sense of the situation, right? So that's where we are now. Then we cut. Then we go to this. We don't know what happened there, right? We just cut and then show him outside smoking, or maybe holding the gun in his hand. Then, however we do it, we just show him confused what who he really is, or who he has become, right? His sense of self. He becomes confused. He understands himself in some way, but in a wrong way, right? So he finds an understanding, a meaning of who he is at the end. Maybe he finally understands, or he gets a glimpse that he's a trash, or just he's been in the wrong path all this life, or he has found some kind of purpose, or that he realizes that he's been manipulated all his life and he can't do it anymore. So we show him with a baby in his hand, with a gun on the other hand. We slide the camera and then we pull out. Then we show him holding the baby, right? No. So depends on how you develop the scenes now. So we can have this shot to mean that he's now going to come after his bosses, realizing that he's just another victim, just like this kid, something like that, right? So we actually have a movement here. That's the first sequence, okay? That's how I use the plot sequence report. Now we can also extend that here, right? The end here, he learns from permission, what he's allowed to do, which amplifies the need, what is missing, what is lacking, which is with conflicts with expediency, which is what need the thing that you have to do, right? You can search the meaning exactly. I don't have the list right now. I have the short description, but I kind of have the idea of the expediency when it's like you just have to do what you have to do right now. It doesn't matter what you do. Just do what's needed. Just fill the gap, regardless of your conscience, regardless of anything, right? Just get it done like that. So it conflicts, this need now, it conflicts with expediency, which then amplifies deficiency. So whatever happens in this conflict, this expediency, however that conflict affects, it amplifies the deficiency. Okay, so it's the same here. The problem, the situation, circumstance, the conflict there amplifies his sense of self. So Zergan's sense of self is that he has to be a zealot like that, right? So that this conflict now, seeing his people dying under the Zerg, now amplifies his sense of self, the idea, not his real self, really, not his real self, but his sense of self, the one that's been ingrained to him by the conflict. That he has to be the Templar that he is, the Primar that he is. Someone who throws away his life, you have to gather people, something like that. You have to sacrifice yourself, right? So it's the same. So from that, we're going to have more sequences for the main character through line. And understand that we are going to have to explore all of this. Look, his unique ability is conditioning. So the way he was built by the conclave is actually his unique ability that will push him through the story. And his critical flaw is actually his state of being. Who he really is actually his critical flaw. It's what's going to be a problem for him throughout the story. So for example, Zergon is really a peaceful being because Protoss are actually psionic beings, which are very peaceful beings. They are not war-like beings, but they are now in a state of war within themselves. and they're shaped to be warriors, to be weapons, but they're actually peaceful beings. And that's going to hold him back. Who he really is going to hold him back in the story. So we have this dynamic now, right? His unique ability is his training, the conditioning, being a warrior, but this is going to be his weakness. His compassion, his caring nature is going to hamper him. Okay, and then his benchmark is learning the information that he gains. You can study all of this using the Dramatica Theory. So that's how I use the plot sequence report. I hope that's clear. But if not, we're going to be doing more of this, maybe in the future, if time permits, if space permits. Because I'm actually developing something right now. I need the money, man. I think we all need finance right now. I mean, we got a lot of dependents, and sometimes in our lives we have to do the best we can, Even if we can't expect the best outcome, we still have to do the best we can, right? So that's it for now. I hope that's clear. If not, you can always rewatch this video and then just focus on how I was thinking, right? Just cut out the parts that are, I think it's clear. I think it's very clear. It's a walkthrough actually of how I look at things, So first, have a familiarity with your story points, your basic story points. For example, for the main character, what I do is actually develop the the overall story first, but not fully. Okay, I don't illustrate everything. Just have the idea of the themes there, using the dictionary, the short definitions. If you have the software, just use the short definitions from the reports. Then I just sleep on it, think about it for a week, a month, just forming the idea in my mind, at the back of my mind. I don't force it consciously because it's going to break you. Just have the idea, the story is like this. So the problem is situation. The focus is in situation. This is how it is. Right? So we're going to explore that maybe next time, the overall story. So I just get an idea of the overall story first, and then I delve into the main character, similar to that one we did. It's just a brush, it's thematic. It's just a thematic view of what's happening with the main character story. Right? So we know that this is his problem, this is what drives him, this is where his focus is going to be, but we don't exactly know how that happens, right? Or where that comes in. But then we use the plot sequence report, and then we see it right there at the start. That this guy is understanding first, appreciating the meaning of, or having a comprehension of, an internal understanding, an internal comprehension, or a how do you say that? Understanding is actually having an internal union of truths, right? Like, for example, yourself and the world. When you understand how your relationship to the world is, means it's not a mental thing, right? It's a spiritual thing. It's you have this intuitive understanding. I can't express it. Anyway, before I get to carried away here, I hope that helps. Don't worry if this helps you. Please try it out yourself. Dramatica.com. I'm not sponsored or anything, but it's a very useful tool. I mean, if I don't have it, if I never studied it, but it took me a while to study it, okay? Because I don't have any focus. I had to work. I had to be worried for 4 years. and I had to work shit for like more years and then more shit. I couldn't focus. The only time I was able to focus really is, short bursts. You noticed my performance in our group before. I was really scatterbrained. I can't finish anything. I just, most of the time, I'm trying to recover from trauma and stuff like that. So this event actually, anyway, we'll do more of that, okay? So hopefully that you can use that. You can find the software. I think it's for I think it's cheap. Sometimes it's on sale. But Chris Huntley gave me a copy before, and I don't know if he remembers, but I have a code. Unfortunately I can't give that. Okay, give that away. I don't have the CD right now. I lost the CD, so I have a problem in that regard. I can't download it. I lost the key. I lost my key. My serial. I lost it. So I just have this one report. So I just have to finish this. Hope to get more money and then maybe buy a new copy of it. I think it's $100 way back, 125 I guess. So I don't know how much it is right now. So thanks guys, and I hope that helps. So see you next time.